It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost call. While to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? The peace of Christ makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am His. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing?
Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us in this time to honor and celebrate our friend Merv Horst. Merv had a lot of friends, a lot of people who loved him and cared about him from all different communities and different spaces. And it's a gift to be able to come together as one community to celebrate and honor the life of Merv Horst. My name is Jason Storbakken, and I serve as pastor at Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship. I'm co-facilitating this evening with Reverend Micah Busey from Judson Memorial Church. Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship meets at the Quaker Meeting House on 15th Street, which is upon the unceded and ancestral land of the Muncie Lenape people. As we recognize the land upon which we all are, I invite you, if you would like to put in the chat box the name of the indigenous people who are the original inhabitants of the land where you are. If you don't know where it is, I'm going to put a website that's very helpful to see where you're located, what ancestral lands you're located on. See them coming in, Abenaki and Lenape. And so as we orient into this space, as we leave from where we were in the different spaces that we were before we came here and we enter into this sacred time and space, I just want to invite you to take a breath with me. We've gathered here, friends and family, as well as various communities that Merv belonged to. Merv was a member at Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship and Judson Memorial Church, and quite likely several other faith communities. Merv was also active with the Sacred Harp, Shape Note Singers, Green Mountain Abbey, whom he discovered in the midst of this pandemic. The world really opened up to him through Zoom. He was also part of Riverside Church and Grace and Peace Mennonite, and many others. And so today we come together for many communities to form one community to honor and celebrate the life of Merv Horst. Thank you for joining us. In the Mennonite Minister's Manual, there's a prayer of thanksgiving and petition to be prayed at a memorial service. And Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship elders Paul and Maria have made themselves available to pray this prayer for us. I'm going to share my screen and I'll pass to them.
God of abundance, source of life, beyond knowledge and thought, mysterious and profound.
Dios de la abundancia, fuente de vida, más allá del conocimiento y del pensamiento, misterioso y profundo.
We thank you because we have seen you in Merv Horst. We thank you for your life in him. We thank you for the love given and received by Merv among family and friends and faith communities.
Te agradecemos y te damos gracias porque te hemos visto en Merv Horst. Te agradecemos por tu vida en él. Te agradecemos por el amor dado y recibido por Merv entre sus familiares, amigos y comunidades de fe.
We grieve at his passing because we were enriched by his presence. Help us through his death to see more deeply into the meaning of his life and our own, and to grasp more firmly the hope that life is longer than our years, and the love you have shown us in Christ is stronger than death.
Nos apenamos por su fallecimiento, porque fuimos enriquecidos por su presencia. Ayúdanos a través de su muerte a profundizar en el sentido de su vida y de la nuestra, así más firmemente la esperanza de la vida, que es más larga en nuestros años, y el amor que nos ha mostrado el Señor Jesucristo, más fuerte que la muerte, a través de Jesucristo, Señor. Amén.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jenny. I'm a member at Judson, and I met Merv singing in the Judson choir many years ago. Merv taught this song to me. I think we're going to look at it on the screen so that you can sing along if you like. You'll have to stay unmuted, unfortunately, since we're on Zoom. But I think Merv would sing along, so feel free to do so as well. Can we share the song so everybody can see it? If you have perfect pitch, I'm going to play this a whole step lower than it shows you on the screen. Jesus, lover of my soul, let me to thy bosom fly, while the nearer waters roll, while the tempest still is high. and keep me pure within. Thou of life, thou fountain art, freely let me take of thee. Spring thou up within my heart, rise to all eternity. Amen.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Valerie H. Holly. I am the Associate Minister at Judson Memorial Church. And I am going to do a prayer. I'm just going to quickly say that I came to know, Merv Horst during the very beginning of the pandemic, when everyone was, as you say, we were all home. And what we decided to do at Judson Memorial Church was have a kind of a Judson Bible study. That's actually what we call it, the Judson Bible study. And we had that Bible study at 3 p.m. And Merv was one of the first folk to come to that Bible study at 3 p.m. And we kept it, and it's still going on now. You'll probably hear from the current facilitator. Yet Merv and I, he was consistent, and he was always helpful, and basically was interested in the kind of exegesing and deep diving and of how, especially how I did the class. So I always remember that, and he was always consistent, and I always respected and looked forward to him being in our class. So let me do the prayer now. I may speak a little later in the service about some other things in this service here about him, but I will go into prayer now. And if you would like to, please join me. Mother, Father, everything, God, we just want to thank you for this opportunity right now. Thank you for this opportunity of called the Merv Horst Memorial, and some say celebration, a celebration of this man who has touched so many lives. And we understand, God, he was in so many, he was in different churches, and he understood it was okay, Lord, to show up in any of your houses of faith, because they all belong to you anyway. So we thank you for Merv Horst. We thank you that he was here with us for the time that that he connected with us in his own way, and each of us connected with him in our way. He was one of your folk, God. He didn't need anyone to tell him that he was accepted by you. As Paul Tillich would like to say, that we are accepted. Merv knew that. And we thank you for him knowing that and modeling that for us. Modeling that you're about love, God. Modeling that he's accepted, I'm accepted, whoever we are, we're accepted by you into your house of faith. Whichever house of faith we are in is all good. So we thank you for that knowledge. We thank you for Merv showing us that, modeling that for us. And so, God, I'm just asking you now to help us all continue in this service of memory, of celebration. Help us to understand that Merv brought light for us. Merv allowed us to understand that our humanness does not detract from being loved by you or having your grace, God. So thank you for that, Lord, and be with us the rest of this celebration of this service that we're having tonight or today, or because I understand there are people here, God, that's from all parts of the world attending this event today, attending this service of celebration of remembering him. Thank you, God. We thank you for love today. We thank you for grace and mercy. Most importantly, Lord, we thank you for peace that surpasses all understanding and grace, Lord. We thank you, we love you, and we believe you and trust you. Amen.
Good evening. My name is Emily Jean Gilbert, and I'm a member of Judson. And I've been asked to read Merv's obituary. I have only known Merv virtually through the morning meditation group at Judson, the circle that has been gathering since the pandemic began, when Micah invited us to share his meditation time with him. Mervyn E. Horst, 61, of New York, New York, passed away unexpectedly on Thursday, January 6, 2022, of natural causes. Born in Dover, New Jersey, he was the son of Florence May Zimmerman Horst of Landis Homes and the late Eugene H. Horst. Merv graduated from Lancaster Mennonite High School and Goshen College. He then moved to Manhattan and made his home there for the last 38 years. His interests included reading family history, genealogy, the German language, sacred hymns, cooking, knitting, and exploring the Big Apple. He found great joy in connecting to various faith communities through modern technology. Merv was a longtime member of Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship. At the time of his passing, he was employed as a derivatives paralegal. Surviving, in addition to his mother, are his sister Cynthia, 4 nieces, and 2 great nieces. He was preceded in death by his brother, Daryl.
Our next song selection is pre-recorded. It's from the Sacred Harp Shape Note Singers. So we're thankful for that community, and it's offering a contribution to this service.
Hi friends, my name is Jason Steidel, and I got to know Merv through Sacred Harp singing. Anyone who knows Merv knows that he loved to sing. Here in New York City, we got to see him on countless occasions, and we loved having him as a part of our community. We'll miss him dearly. Today, in Merv's honor, we're going to sing Sacred Harp number 122, the first 2 verses. The song is called All Is Well.
the upper skies. All is well, all is well.
My name is Mel Lehman, and I've been a friend of Merv Horst for 38 years. And I can't think of a more appropriate part of scripture to read in memory of our dear brother Merv than this. Romans 8:35, 37 to 39. Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean God no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted or hungry or destitute or in danger or threatened with death? No. Despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ, who loved us. And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below, indeed nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reading, and I agree. I love that this is the scripture that we are sharing at this memorial for and celebration of our friend Merv. My name is Micah, and I'm one of the ministers at Judson Memorial Church, and I would just like to, before we go into this moment of reflection and meditation, if you might just settle a bit deeper into your seat. Begin to steady your breath. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes and conjure up an image, a memory of Merv in your mind. And as you continue to hold that image, take a deep breath in and let it out. Another breath in and out. Another breath in and out. If you have your eyes closed, go ahead and open them again. And look at the faces in front of you. Connect those faces, faces that you might know, faces that you don't know. Connect those to the image of Merv that you were holding in your own mind. I am so grateful that I get to share this reflection right after we heard those powerful words from St. Paul, because even though the word separate is found 4 times in that passage, Paul's words are, in my opinion, at their core, a wholesale rejection of separation. The entire thesis of this passage is about connection overcoming alienation. And connection is the word that rises to the top of the list whenever I think of Merv. And I met Merv about 10 years ago, but it's over the past nearly 2 years as we've been swimming in the grief and the fear and the disconnect caused by this global pandemic that I've gotten to know this remarkable man more deeply than I ever imagined. And in my experience over the past 2 years, I learned that Merv was all about resisting separation and sowing connection. And that truth is evident in every aspect of this service today, including the fact that at least 5 different communities that were blessed by Merv's presence are gathered here. And that's only the major ones I know. There's probably 500. I'm sure there are multiple overlapping communities that are also making up this sacred circle right now, because Merv was all about resisting separation and sowing connection, even in ways that often remained invisible to most of us. And in a few minutes, we're going to open up this space for all of you to share memories of Merv, memories of the ways that he bridged countless communities and reached across borders and barriers to connect. So over the next few minutes, I just want to offer a simple little 5-point framing for how I think of the connections that Merv sowed among all of us. As I was reflecting on my experience of his generous and unique presence, I found myself focusing on 5 main takeaways from the gospel according to Merv. And these are the 5 ways through which I think he created connection and continually reminded us all that there is no separation between us. So in no particular order, here they are, 5 lessons from the gospel according to Merv. 1, make connections through the body and the breath. 2, make connections through the mind. 3, make connections through the heart. 4, make connections through the soul. And 5, make connections through the mystery. So I'm going to lead us through those 5 and just elaborate a bit. So first, 1, make connections through the body and the breath. In the midst of this global pandemic, as most of us complained about Zoom fatigue and lamented our times outside of our walls and had to give in to quarantine, even as we so desperately wanted to be back in the same physical space, Merv regularly reminded us of how lucky we are to have technology that bridges us and brings us together. He regularly reminded us that due to his own physical limitations, due to the disabled realities of his own body, he actually wouldn't be able to connect to these communities anymore were it not for the blessed gifts of a computer and a Zoom account. And boy, did he use that Zoom account. He used it to connect himself to the communities he loved, and he used it to aid others in connecting themselves to the communities they needed. He was always up for teaching someone to get more dexterous with their computer skills so that they didn't have to think of disability as a debilitating separation, but rather as an invitation to discover new breath, new ways of reaching out. He was honest about his own bodily realities, and he welcomed others to share their own authentic stories of these remarkable, frustrating, fallible, amazing skin containers that we all live in. 2, make connections through the mind. As we've already heard, Merv loved information. And more importantly, he loved sharing that information. He could sometimes present that information rather bluntly, but once you learned his language, once you learned the rhythms, you realize that no matter how blunt the sharing, it was always presented with a deep love of learning and a deep love of learning as connection. Because of Merv, I know about obscure German theologians that I didn't learn about in seminary, songs that I had never heard, scripture that I had avoided, history that I had never learned, recipes for dishes I can't wait to make, books that I'm scared to read, facts about goat yoga, Google shortcuts I still don't understand how to use. I mean, we're talking Bible studies, book groups, panel discussions. Merv not only sought to fill our minds with the information he so wanted to share, but he was always up for hearing any bit of trivia you had tucked away in the archives of your own mind. He was an insatiably curious, lifelong learner. He not only invited all of us to be learners, he invited all of us to be his teachers as well. 3, make connections through the heart. Merv's communication style might have taken a little time and patience to understand, but once you did, you couldn't help but feel the immense love that emanated from his core. He was open and vulnerable and sensitive, and he always had the time and patience to allow anyone who crossed his path to also be open, vulnerable, and sensitive. He trusted that you wanted to be loved, but he never forced connection. He offered, and he listened, and he waited to learn whether or not his offering would be accepted. And if it wasn't accepted, he moved on. And if it was accepted, he opened up and held you the way he also needed to be held. And if you held him and allowed yourself to be held, Merv was your loyal friend to the end. 4, make connections through the soul. Merv loved Jesus. Merv loved God. Merv loved Mennonite Fellowship, Riverside Fellowship, Judson Fellowship, Sacred Heart Fellowship, probably fellowship that I don't even know he participated in. Merv loved prayer. Merv loved to sing. He loved to share his own concerns and celebrations, his own joy and sadness in community. He brought a deeply embodied Christian faith to the table, but he was always ready to hear from the other guests. He considered his own spirituality just one of the many offerings at the soul food buffet, and he was willing to taste every other delicious and strange dish that was served. He asked questions, lots and lots of questions, but he never claimed that his answers were the right or most nourishing ones. His questions were real. His questions were always asked in the spirit of making a more soul-enriching feast for all, co-creating a more life-giving smorgasbord than any of us would be able to make on our own. And finally, 5, make connections through the mystery. This is the one that I find the most difficult to say because, like many of you, I just want Merv back here with us right now, dropping notes in the chat box, sharing links, accidentally unmuting himself, correcting me while citing Wikipedia, or as he called it, Rabbi Google, and just being the amazing, odd, inspiring friend we know. But ever since we all received that notice that he had died on Epiphany, we've been plunged into that awful moment of mystery that even the most faithful of us probably still feel. Why was Merv taken from us so abruptly and so early? Why didn't we get one more chance to remind him that we loved him, that we needed him, that we felt connected to him in those ways he so clearly wanted to foster? And this is never and can never be a moment for answers. This is the moment when mystery can only invite us to hold those questions, to tell stories of Merv and trust that his story might continue on another plane, if not at least in these memories we continue to share. But Merv set us up and prepared us for this exact moment. The connections he made through body, breath, mind, heart, and soul, the connections we all make through body, breath, mind, heart, and soul are often intangible and ephemeral, always mysterious. We can't always be sure of where we're going, but we can take control of what we leave behind. And look what Merv has left behind. The stories we share here today, the memories that hover around us, are the effervescent, intertwining offerings that are the gifts of connection that Merv left in his wake. They remind us to stay awake, not only to the connections that we're making every moment of our lives, but to all of the invisible tiny ways that we might not be paying attention to. Merv's last personal email came to me just as 2021 and was ending, and as it was giving way to 2022. And its words both haunt me and make me smile, the same way I felt about many of the things Merv brought into my life. So I feel compelled to share these words with you. Here's the subject heading. I am fully employed since November 8th and actually kinda overwhelmed with the amount of work. And here's what it says inside. Thank you for being in my corner, Micah. I am in yours. And I am getting paid what I am worth. And 100% work from home. And if things continue well, I may no longer need to live in NYC. I don't have the emotional need to live here, but wherever my life is easiest. See my LinkedIn profile for more details. We are Merv's living, breathing LinkedIn profile. We are the proof of the networks that he nurtured, of the communities he linked throughout his life. So may we not hoard this kinship, but share it, spread it, extend and expand it, all of our bodies, all of our breath, our minds, our hearts, and our souls awakened to the mystery and opened up to the unfolding possibilities of continuing connection. That's what Merv would do. We were in Merv's corner, and Merv was and will always be in ours. Amen. So now we're going to do exactly what I just talked about. Continue to look at the faces that are in front of you. We're going to share some memories of Merv. The way that we'll like to do that is for you to virtually raise your hand and use the Zoom tool that is available to you, as Merv so often reminded us. If that does fail for you, Jason and I will be looking around throughout this room so that if you aren't able to virtually raise your hand, we can see you waving. But I'll be able to see the lineup if you use your Zoom tool, just as Martha is doing. So Martha, go ahead, unmute yourself, tell a story, and we're going to try to keep these stories brief just because clearly we've got a lot of Merv's friends here. So just in the interest of being polite to all involved here, let's try to keep it to 1 minute to 2 minutes. Thank you.
You got it. Merv and I were both from Pennsylvania, and I had folks who were Mennonite where I grew up as well. So we connected. And what I just got to say is how much his life and his presence meant to me. You know, I'm sorry, I'm going slow, but you know, we were lucky to have him in our life, both because of his expertise in technology, but because of his expertise in life. And that's enough.
Thank you, Martha. Phyllis, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hello, my name is Patricia. I'm Phyllis's daughter. My parents were friends with Merv. I was never like super close to him personally, but during the fall, I was offered the opportunity for like a ride, like a free ride to New York City. Like some acquaintances of mine were like going there for a wedding, and they for some time were like offering to like just drive folks who wanted to visit. And I really wanted to go because I hadn't been in forever, but I was like needing housing for my time there because they could like provide transportation but not housing. And my mom actually like reminded me that I could like reach out to Merv because I was trying to reach out to folks and no one was getting back to me. And he actually offered to house me in New York, like even though like I don't know, I hadn't seen him in decades. I was never really like super personally close to him, and I was so grateful for that. Like he offered to just like let me like stay like in his apartment, and then when my transportation fell through, so I ended up not being able to go, he expressed like sadness to me about that. Like I was really sad about it, but he even like specifically mentioned that like he was sad about it. And I'm just so grateful. And I don't know, like I was really like shocked and saddened to hear that he had passed. I had always like just kind of thought that like maybe at some point in the future I'd be able to like couch surf at his place, like visiting New York or something. He also he like sent me like a follow-up like Facebook message like asking how I was doing, like sometime like after the transportation fell through, and I had never gotten back to him, and I always like felt so bad about that, like hearing that he had died. Thank you all for putting this on.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Betty, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Betty McIntosh. I'm from Judson Church, and I miss Merv tremendously. And he was in our meditation group at 9 o'clock in the morning that I attended a lot, and he attended a lot. And anything that would come up that there was a question about, 30 seconds, Merv had the answer or had the explanation for. And I'm not really a very good techie person, so I ran into a difficult technical thing that I had to do in getting onto a particular Microsoft platforms for important meetings that I had to go to. It was not Zoom, which I now know how to do. But anyway, Merv was so nice to me. He even made sort of a fake link so that I could learn how to access this particular platform. And I think if it wasn't for Merv, I just was not going to get understanding how to do this. But he was so patient, and I, was slow and goofed and everything. And he said, "Okay, are you with me?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, I don't want to go too fast for you. And so that was like so sweet of him to be so kind. And I think I'll always remember that. And when I get some little glitch technically, I think, oh, I could contact Merv, but I can't. So anyway, thanks for this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Betty. Warren and Linda, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Thank you for this opportunity to reflect on Merv's connection with our lives. Probably goes back 20 some years. Linda and I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, and I'm a retired Mennonite minister and visited Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship over the years. But one of the words, Micah, that you shared was that of connection. And I think of Merv as being someone that really valued connection, and he knew how to build connections. Your message today really illustrated that well, but Merv really embodied that. And I think he was living out what I understand as being the the body of Christ. And we are many parts, but Merv was always trying to connect the dots. And if you reciprocated a friendship smile and opened a conversation, Merv was ready to walk into that and listen and also share his thoughts. So I really value those times together. And Merv was actually in touch with us the last month or two, wondering about opportunities to maybe move to a retirement community in Lancaster, and just wanted our thoughts about it. But thank you for this opportunity this evening.
Thank you so much, Warren. Daniel Bourne, were you raising your hand? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself.
How's that?
You got it.
Thank you. I was waving because I didn't know where to find the hand. I'm extremely. I was shocked by the news of Merv's death. I met Merv in 1984 in New York when he moved to New York, and we were both a part of the Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship then. And a few years later, my wife and I became a part of the Judson Church. And I stayed in touch with Merv over the years. I moved away to Ohio and then back to Chicago. But I would see Merv in New York from time to time, and we would go to lunch. And the thing about Merv is he was an amazing conversationalist. He was funny, usually intentionally so. I remember meeting him at Bear Stearns, where he was a paralegal. This was in 2007. And Bear Stearns had a very impressive, it was an investment bank. And Merv took me to lunch in the cafeteria where I had, the choice of Alaskan crab legs and what have you. It was kind of like the Shangri-La of cafeterias. This was a very nice place. And then we went up to his office, which was paneled in dark wood. It was an impressive office. And Merv had piles of documents on his desk. And I said, Merv, what's all the paperwork? And he said, Dan, these are called derivatives or mortgage-backed securities. And I said, Merv, could you explain to me what those are? And he said, kind of not batting an eye, he said, we're still figuring that out. And a year later, Bear Stearns collapsed, and that was the mortgage crisis in the US markets. And Merv was part of my education. He was in the middle of it, in the very thick of it. And he had the honesty and the humor to say, we're still figuring that out. And I saw him a couple more times live in New York after he started experiencing serious medical problems with diabetes. And thanks for having this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Mark G., go ahead and unmute yourself.
Did I unmute myself? Hello, everybody. Mark G. from Judson Memorial Church. My last name is Gleason, and my memories of Merv, I've only been in Judson Church for about 18 months, since June of 2020, when I needed a spiritual connection somehow online, and I discovered the church. Shortly thereafter, I discovered the prayer and meditation circle. And I felt I attended on weekends and whatever days I had off. And this was a good bunch of people that I enjoyed. And there was Merv also. And he was such a great guy, such a great soul. And we would talk. And two things that come to mind immediately. I've only been in Judson a short while, but two things come in mind. One was the Judson picnic at Washington Square Park back in September of the last year, and meeting him and talking with him, just getting to know him better and just seeing people live in person also. So Merv was such a great guy. And on Thanksgiving, he invited me up to Washington Heights for a Thanksgiving dinner. I went to his place to help him out with with him also, and just to be with him also. And I met up with a bunch of people who I got to know through the dinner. I've never met these people before, and it was such a great time also. And it just and Merv was such a great friend. I wish I've known him longer. And when I heard the news of his death, I couldn't believe it. And I had to ask Mike if it was true. And sadly, it was. And I will always remember Merv as such a great guy, intelligent person, and a gentle soul. Love him. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Nehemiah, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Shalom and hi, everyone. First, I want to honor the community, the Mennonite. It's so different to hear about Amish and Mennonite or anybody from the internet and to meet you in person. I like you. And I'm going to so many communities. Why not come to you one day? So thank you for showing me a little bit of who you are. I'm choosing to speak to you, Merv, directly, because I have to speak from my heart, and I know from my experience and for my conviction that you are listening. So why speak about you? I speak to you. Merv, I met you in one of the many groups that you share, and I share this with you because I went to many groups also to offer support, because I've been in crisis before through this challenging time. And I've been every day then with you and Judson and Micah. And I'll be very blunt and say, we all were going through a hard time, and the stuff was coming out for many of us. And for you, Merv, you hit bottom of bottom, because there was a pandemic and there was your sickness and disability and being dependent on people. The bitterness come because the people weren't as smart as you and you to listen to them and to educate them, and you weren't patient. And you express it. You weren't plain. And I remember there was one person in the group that was teasing you all the time for that. And I wanted to stop this person. But then I saw that, Merv, and that's what I want to say about you. You had a skill to make out of lemon, lemonade. The person that was making fun of you, you took it in and you learned. And I've seen transformation in tens, if not hundreds of people through this period. And I'm saying it to your face, and I hope I said it to you when you were alive. I haven't seen anyone that transformed as much as you, that made such a good lemonade out of this lemon. I'm serious. Because when I met you first, you were sharp, bitter, expressing all the pain, the physical, all the things that hit you in this life at that time. And over time, I saw you become peaceful. I saw you become serene, loving, accepting. I mean, it was amazing to watch you. And you wanted to visit another community, my community, or at least one, the main one, or one of the two main ones, the Omemu, spiritual, mystical, joyful, progressive synagogue. And you didn't manage. And I'm so sorry that you didn't manage. But you used to read my emails with the spiritual inspiration, whatever I was trying to share. And I just feel, Merv, that what you did, that somewhere inside subconsciously, your soul knew that your time is short here. You didn't know, but your soul knew. And you had to put many mileage of transformation towards the end, and you did. So whatever you believe about the other world, I know you're in a very high place, and I'm so happy to be your friend, and I'll be your friend for good until I'm pretty old. I might join you in whatever time. Okay, so thank you everyone, and for let me speak, and thank you for Judson and for the Mennonite to create such a beautiful space for people to share from our heart. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you. Melinda, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I knew Merv when I came to New York City to go to graduate school at Union Seminary. And for those of you who, I went to Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship, and it's been over 20 years now since I first arrived. It's hard to believe. But for the 5 years that I lived there, I often traveled on the Uptown train with Paul Renesky and Merv on our way home from worship services there. And we had all kinds of conversations. I remember the first time I went with Paul to Merv's place and recognized how much he trusts. That was for me a signal how much he trusted me to come into his home. But two things I want to share. One thing I learned from Merv is the importance of physical touch. I am not a touchy-feely person, but when we were on the worship planning group together, the worship committee at Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship, Merv insisted often that we pass the peace every Sunday. Now, this was not one of our habits, and some of us as Mennonites were getting a little bit concerned that doing it every Sunday was undermining its meaning. But for Merv, this was so important because he said, I'm a single person and I live by myself. And this is my one opportunity to receive physical touch during the week. And if I can't do this in church, then what's wrong with us? And that opened my eyes and my ears and my heart to think about how important physical touch is and how much I take that for granted. The other, maybe more recent memory is during the pandemic, I had a chance to reconnect with Manhattan Mennonite Fellowship. Jason invited me to come speak. And so I was, I do peace theology, right? And so I was doing my thing in full swing, and I'm quoting this wonderful vision from Isaiah about beating swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. And then what does Merv do? He goes and spoils my whole thing by pointing out that in Joel, the reverse is true. What am I going to do with that? Where the pruning hooks are turned into spears. And I was like, oh, snap, Merv. And he's like, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just, so Merv's biblical literacy came to sort of joyfully bite me in the butt, and I really appreciated it. That was another way that Merv just kind of kept me on my toes. And I'm sure that other people have experienced it too. So I am glad for Merv's wit. I remember Merv's vulnerabilities, and I'm so glad I knew him as long as I did.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Anita, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Anita Pinnell Castle. I'm the pastor of Grace and Peace Mennonite, primarily virtual church. I knew Merv for maybe about 25 to 30 years. I really can't remember when I met him, but it was sometime maybe 30 years ago. And I used to attend 7th Avenue Mennonite Church, which then became Infinity Mennonite Church. And I met him through that. So I knew him before we went virtual, but two things that resonate with me about Merv. One, he loved music, and I love that about him. I love that he loved the singing, he loved spirituals, he loved traditional Mennonite hymns. I love that because I love music too. And so he used to tell us at Grace and Peace that he loved the music, and we love music there too. And also, I also love that Merv was curious about everything and everybody. And he also a couple of times interrupted me when I was doing a meditation or when we were saying things. And he would say, well, I don't mean to offend. Some groups think I offend, but I don't mean to offend. I was like, it's okay, Merv. We're not offended. We want you to speak up and say things. And of course, sometimes what he said caught us up off guard, and we were like, it's okay, but he always kept us informed. As a woman who identifies as primarily African-American, he would tell us about all kinds of stuff that was going on that we should go to for Black History Month, for Martin Luther King Day, for Black Lives Matter, for all kinds of things. And I appreciated that so much, but not just those groups, but any group that was fighting for, you know, someone's justice, for making sure that people were heard. Merv would tell us about it. And we appreciated that. We counted on him for that. And we appreciated his concern for people that were different from him, different from us, but who also deserved the love of Jesus. And we appreciated that so much about Merv. And I will miss his little, in the chat, he would tell us, if we would mention something, he also would tell us, oh, actually, you know what? You can look up this good book about this, or you should check out this link on the internet about this. And we were like, wow, okay, all right, we'll do that. You know, he just kept us on our toes and kept us informed. And that was a wonderful thing. And so I'm gonna miss that about Merv. I'm gonna miss his interruptions. I'm gonna miss his comments. I'm gonna miss his curiosity. And I'm gonna miss his willingness to join groups to speak up for justice for every person, no matter who they are. And that I appreciate so much.
Thank you, Anita. Jane Truehold, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm a member of Judson Memorial Church and got to know a bit Merv at first when the book group, our book group was meeting in person. He would come when he could do that. And even if he hadn't read the book, he'd always have really significant information about the background or the history that was involved. And then in the morning meditation, where I was a regular participant, as was he, and we really got to appreciate, as other people have said, his willingness to share both knowledge and his Rabbi Google, as he called it. And I guess what I really want to say is that, yes, Merv had a way of being blunt and direct and corrective of people's mistakes, as he would, or misspeaking or whatever. But he was also, in addition to being kind, he was a very sensitive soul, and he did take things in. And we coordinated on the morning meditation for with facilitators for a period of time. And he really cared about how people spoke and how they did it, and the people who were facilitators and the people who were participants. And we shared other things about I don't know, something called LIBOR, which is the London index of something or other. He explained to me. I was shocked when I heard that he was no longer with us. It was such a loss. And I like to think he's still around, as Nehemiah does. It's hard. Just miss him because I want to, you know, as Micah said, we hadn't finished the conversation we were having. And so bless you, Merv.
Thank you, Jane. Lee Ferry, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm a newcomer to Merv, and I'm not sure how long it's been, a year or so. We were together on the Green Mountain Monastery online, as we called it, where we had, I think there were morning prayers, but I only went to Compline, the evening prayers, and he was always there. And I noticed along the way, and never really had a chance to talk to him about the fact that I also grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania as an Episcopalian, but in an area that was very influenced by Mennonites, and I was. And also I spent a year living in New York City in part of the hospital building in Brooklyn where I was working and training. But I was sort of like, how did he get here? When I realized he was in New York and he was a Mennonite, which, I mean, I thought it was neat because it was going back home for me. But the memory that stands out for me is that one night for Compline, during Compline, he signed in and he was in the emergency, in a, one of those surgical beds they put you in and take you in the emergency. And they were just kind of, I shouldn't say hauling him off, but taking him off for more examination. And he was there. He was in the prayers with us. I mean, physically there, we were watching him in the hospital bed as they wheeled him down the hall and as he was joined with us. And I think that image of him connecting with us, even though we were different in many ways, we were alike in many ways, and he could use the modern tools to stay with us and be part of prayer with us. And I'll miss him.
Thank you, Lee. Sherry, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Posey, and my partner, Susan Julia, is not able to be here, but wanted me to speak for her as well. We met Merv more than 10 years ago at Judson when all of us were attending in person. And once in a while, we maybe go and have breakfast or something together. And then when Susan and I moved out of the city, we kind of lost touch with Judson and Merv. And it wasn't until very recently, just before the pandemic started, that we kind of reconnected with him. But then when Micah started the meditation groups, that was just great. And, Merv would send an email occasionally checking in on Susan to see how she was feeling, or he'd send me something asking me questions about chaplaincy. I'm a Buddhist chaplain, and I'm also a watchmaker. So he was constantly peppering me with questions about watches and gears and why are they so expensive and things like that. But I just wanted to say a quick thing about something that made me chuckle as people were telling their stories. This mug is a mug that I bought in Chicago, which is where I'm from. And I thought the name of the restaurant was Velois because the restaurant is in Hyde Park, and it is or was one of Barack Obama's favorite restaurants to eat at when he was a state senator. And his office was in the area. And then when he became a senator in Washington, he kept his office there, but he would go to this restaurant. And Merv squinted at the screen, looking at the mug, and he said, "Are you sure that's not pronounced Valois?" And I said, "They're Greek, Merv. It's Velois." And before I could finish talking about it, he had the website for the restaurant in the chat. And he said, "Are you sure it's one of Obama's favorite?" And I said, "The plaque is on the wall next to the grill so that you can order what Obama ordered for lunch every single day if you want." He had that way of keeping you on your toes for pronunciation of almost any language, wanting more information. He was one of the few people I could talk to about watches and would get as excited as I did. And he didn't get bored. Susan wasn't always tapping me going, people's eyes are crossing and stop talking about the watches. Merv wanted to hear. Both of us were so shocked. I came home from overtime and saw Micah's email pop up on my phone as I was coming into the door of my apartment. And I walked into the bedroom and woke Susan up and I said, "It's Merv." And she goes, "What about Merv?" And I said, "He's died." And both of us just kind of teared up. It's so genuinely weird for us to not have a Merv email pop up on our screen at some point. So I know he's here. I know he's watching this. Hope he's got a watch. And I miss you. And Susan misses you. Be well, take care.
Thank you so much, Sherry and Susan. Rhonda, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm Rhonda Mitchell from Grace and Peace Mennonite Church. And I've known Merv maybe 30, 35, 40 years. I don't remember how long. But more recently, in the last couple of years, he's been coming to Grace and Peace Mennonite for the Sunday service, for our Bible study, for our fun nights. And I echo everything everyone has said about him. But the most important thing for me in the last few years is that he always said, "Rhonda, you understand me. You really understand me, Rhonda." And he would call me, he would ask me questions about home health aides, about accessoride, about all these different healthcare related issues that only people who are disabled can understand. And I felt so special and so smart that he came to me to ask me my personal opinion about things, because just like you all said, Merv researched everything. He seemed like he knew everything. And that he would say to me, "Rhonda, you understand me. You know all about it." And I just really valued him for that, for making me feel so special. And I'll miss him.
Thank you, Rhonda. Melody, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I honor everyone here today who is joining in this celebration and memorial of Merv's life. I originally from Harlem, New York City, grew up at 7th Avenue Mennonite Church. Like many of you said there, my sister Anita Castle as well. I don't remember not knowing Merv. He was just a part of our community. And especially in the New York City Mennonite churches, he was just such a huge part of my understanding of what it means to have a multicultural church and to be able to share in our Christian faith as we did. And throughout the years, we continue to stay in contact. Particularly, I enjoyed our theological discussions on Facebook Messenger. So Merv would always send a chat, and he was very supportive of my theological studies, and we would have lots of conversations on Messenger about James Cone and Black liberation theology, and Howard Thurman as well, and others. And he would always ask me questions, and usually at a time when I may not didn't have a moment to maybe have that particular debate at that time, but I always got back to him, and we would have some interesting discussions about it. I think one thing that out of many that I remember and appreciate about Merv is he would reach out and be vulnerable and really just tap into what's happening in your life. And so as I look at a recent messenger, he just says, "Hey, Melody, good morning." It's like, "I'm going through my contact list. What's going on with you?" And I could just feel him. He really wanted to know authentically, not just a pat answer, something on the surface. He wanted to know what was happening with you, not what we see, or what you're showing or what we, share on Facebook or any social media. He wanted to know. I felt that. And he said, I'm sending out also a group email to people, but how are you doing? Where are you right now? And this is the question that really struck me. He said, can I do anything for you? Can I do anything for you? And then he said, can you do anything for me? Can you do anything for me? And then he said, would you like someone else to contact you? And whom? And it really touched my life, especially in the years of the passing of my mother and others in our community. He wanted to know, if I can't help you, maybe someone else can help you. I want to know what's really happening. And so I would miss that. And it was genuine and it was authentic and he was himself. And I celebrate that and I honor that. And I just want to read in closing something from Howard Thurman, For a Time of Sorrow. And this is from Meditations of the Heart. I share with you the agony of your grief. The anguish of your heart finds echo in my own. I know I cannot enter all you feel, nor bear with you the burden of your pain, but I can but offer what my love does give, the strength of caring, the warmth of one who seeks to understand, the silent storm-swept bareness of so great a loss. This I do in quiet ways, that on your lonely path, you may not walk alone. And surely we were not alone with a friend like Merv, and we are not alone now. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. Chloe and Elgin, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Hi, I'm Chloe Storbakken from Manhattan Midnight Fellowship, and I'm here today to honor and respect Merv's presence. And I was just going to share a story about him. So a couple of years ago, when I was much younger, he came over for Christmas, and it was really lovely, like having us there and his family, and how pleasant he was and how kind he was just being here with us for Christmas. But I just want to stay here to honor his presence. So thank you, Merv, for all you have given us, all the joy and the light and the love you have brought to all of our hearts. Thank you, Merv.
Thank you so much. Katrina and Mike, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Hello, everyone. This is Katrina, and I'm here with my husband, Mike. We are joining from Korea, and we've been friends with Merv for over 30 years, and we just recently relocated here. And even here, Merv was sending emails and notes and advice, and I have two stories to tell, one from long ago and this more recent one. Merv sent us a video of a place here that he felt sure we needed to eat. And when we started watching this, we had to pause and say, how long is this video we've committed to? And he sent us a 30-minute video on a slow motion assembly of some gourmet burger. And he was so enthusiastic about this place and just wanted us to go. And I reminded him, Merv, we had given up eating beef for climate change. And he was, this one is worth making an exception for. So we went and he was right. It was a great burger. And so we've been telling ourselves we'll go have one more for Merv. The other story we have is over, I guess, maybe 25 years ago. And it's just such a perfect Merv story of kindness and caring and theology and inappropriateness.
Blunt communication.
Yes. We tell this story at MMF. All our friends there will be very familiar with it. We tell it every Palm Sunday. So About 25 years ago, our oldest daughter, Micah, was 2 or 3, and it was Palm Sunday, and all the children had palms and had been walking with them. We'd all marched with our palms. And at the end of the service, Merv had that skill that many of you are probably familiar with of folding the palms into crosses. And he came up to our daughter and said, "Baby Micah," she was young enough, 2 or 3, that he still called her Baby Micah. "Baby Micah, would you like me to fold your palm into a cross for you?" And Micah said to him, "What's a cross?" And Merv was appalled, and he looked down at her in shock, and he said, "What do you mean, what's a cross? You know how Jesus died." And our 2-year-old daughter looked up at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Baby Jesus is dead?" You know, from her perspective, just a few months before, we'd been celebrating his birthday, and now the shock of finding out he was dead. And so every Palm Sunday, we tell that story, and Merv has a big laugh with us. And we just have so many stories about Merv, and it's just so hard picturing MMF or the world without him. And we know how much he would have enjoyed being here in this group. And we know how that there would not be a single story or speaker that he would not have had a comment on or a correction. Anyway, love you, Merv.
Love you, Merv. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Stephen, go ahead and unmute yourself.
The last time I remember sitting right next to Merv was at David Wenger's funeral about 4 years ago. And looking around that room and seeing the diversity of faces, the racial, economic, cultural, linguistic diversity of that crowd, I said, this is where God is in the world. And I think when we look at our faces today in honor of Merv, we can say this is where God is in the world. He really drew broadly across all boundaries. And it was really a very special person.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Jane Lucas, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm listening to so many people talk about Merv's astute acuity for criticism, to pick out things and yet find a good way to resolve it. And I'm struck by, during the COVID period, for some reason, we got into regular emails, I think because Craig called him on one of the call lists that we had. And I made a mistake in an email, and I said, "Dear Horst," and I went on and said something, and I signed it Jane. And he came back and he said, "My name is not Horst, it's Merv." And then he continued to answer the email. And at the end, he said, "Thank you, Horst." So the next time I received something from him, he said, "Lucas," which is my last name. And we went on from then on. It was like a flirtation, really, how he would make a little joke about his name and my name through all the emails. And it was a continual, like, little story. And I was reminded one time when he was doing that, I even said to him, I read a book about Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said, at the table, important things happen. If somebody picks up the wrong fork, you must also pick up the wrong fork. And that, to me, was the story of Lucas and Horst for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Mary Nell, go ahead and unmute yourself.
It's been so amazing listening to people that I had to take my hand down for a while because I thought that that it would never get to that end of the line. And I don't have much to say about Merv, but I was in the meditation group in the mornings with him. And two things that I remember in particular is that one, I've been fighting a fleece trimmer, and he has always been very concerned about that. My getting correct help with it and things like that. And between him and Jane Truehold and Jane Lucas, I think that I really have made steps to do that, although it was my worst time. But so that was A. And then B, when Thanksgiving came, I had mentioned in the circle that I was having Thanksgiving with my husband Phil and our nephew James, and we were going to a restaurant called Sarah Beth's. And he was so curious about Sarah Beth's and how good a restaurant that was. And we had a good time afterwards. And the thing that sort of struck me is that, you have these conversations that on a student call it whatever, but he remembered the conversation, both of them, and followed up with them like days later when I showed up again. Like, and how did that go? What's new with that? And I thought that was very special, because usually, often, on conversations where there's a lot of people, you tend to say stuff and you kind of forget what was going on with the person. But he never really forgot what was happening with my little case. And I know that after that, when he hosted his own Thanksgiving dinner, I understand it was really amazing. Our friends shared about this. And then the last thing, and this is quick, I have a nephew that has been handicapped all his life. He never had speech. He had very difficulty walking. He was mental retardation, they call that now, very seriously. And he lived at home with his parents. He lived home after his parents died with his brother, and he passed away just this past year. And his sister-in-law was telling me about she said, I know he's in heaven, and I know he's talking and he's running and all this stuff. And I can't help thinking, I hope he met Merv up there. So that's my contribution.
Thank you, Mary Nell. Addie, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I have so many stories about Merv. I want to say that my daughter Margaret and I often said Merv was one of our favorite people in the world. Merv always brought life, controversy, and light and correction into situations. The last time he and I were together, we did the Advent service together, and I was giving my definition of Advent, and then he went online and came up with another definition of Advent. That was kind of the way Merv was always contributing. But I have some very specific transformative memories about Merv. Probably nearly 40 years ago, we were at a retreat And one of the issues was gender, etc. And Merv talked about being Mennonite. And it was the first time that I realized that I wasn't Mennonite in that context, that it was my first understanding that I was seen as being different, that Mennonite was a particular thing that I wasn't. And it was kind of daunting to me. But Merv is also the person who most epitomizes what being Anabaptist is really about in the way that he lived, in the wideness of his circle. But he started me on that journey. And then he also manifested what it really meant. The other thing was being in a difficult situation where I was in a public situation and Merv was there with me. And he was sensitive enough to know that what was being said was very difficult and hard for me to hear. And so he immediately spoke up against it. And many times Merv has done that in so many different settings. And it's quite unusual in Anabaptist circles that a Mennonite person will speak out like that. So Merv was what I would call a transcendent human. And it's amazing to find out all the different connections. I could say, oh, Merv, I was on this prayer group and Merv was on it. He knew it. Merv was at Ramamu. I consider Ramamu one of my haunts too. Merv was everywhere where people were connecting. And I will miss him so much at MMF. I just have so many stories about him. But I wanted to say something. And I know that sounds jumbled because in my mind, there are just so many stories about Merv. And I know that my family will miss him. At one point, we had wanted Merv to come and live with us. And he was just a light. And I think we will have a great inheritance in our fellowship because Merv was there. He really epitomized what it means to love Jesus, to be a follower of Christ, to be inclusive, to be funny, to be fully human. And that's one of the things I really loved about him. He was so human and so illustrative of the divine nature. So I love you, Merv.
Thank you, Addie. Jen, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I know Merv from the Judson Morning Meditation Circle, and I first met Merv when he was in the hospital. He was so open with all of us, talking about the struggles that he faced. And then this past summer, my mother had health issues, and I just, I grew to really appreciate what he taught me as I was going through that journey with my mother. And his advocacy, his honesty was really a gift to me because I think that it made me a better advocate for my mother. And I think it also makes me more understanding of the challenges that people go through. And I just necessarily was not fully aware of it. So that's something for which I'll always be grateful to him for. And also, I think so many people during the pandemic spoke about how impersonal Zoom was. But I really felt that Merv made it very intimate, in our morning meditations, or we would have our conversations. It really was not a barrier in any form. And I think it just really helped me form a community and join a community that I just cherish. And his smile, and he was thrilled to know that my mom has Mennonite roots. So he would talk about scrapple and Mennonite food. And every now and then he'd say, I'm really in the mood for scrapple. Do you know where I can get some good scrapple? And so, those kinds of things I just so appreciate, and how thoughtful he was. He always remembered Mom's name and my brother's name, and remembered everything that they were going through and I was going through. And like Mary Nell said, it's uncanny, right? How he knew of all of us and our cares and our needs, and was just so mindful and personal. And I know he made me feel loved and special. And that's something I appreciate about him. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Sonia, I hear that you'd like to share as well.
I'm Sonia, and I met Merv about 3 or 4 years ago because he came to my church and he said, Sonia, you are the one that have to talk about the LBGT group. They need to be in your church and you need to be more inclusive. And every time I have a chance to talk about it, it's almost every Sunday, I talk about it. And I would call him and I would say, Merv, I think I got spanked this week. What should I do? He said, pick yourself back up and keep going. Talk about it. Talk about it. Because only because of you, the LBGT group will be inclusive at your church. And I really appreciate him giving me the encouragement and to really advocate for this precious group at my church. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Martha Gottwals?
Okay. Hi, everybody. First of all, I hope and pray that Merv's looking down and realizing how much he's loved. Because people don't always realize that, and he deserves it. Second, folks from Pennsylvania. I come from Montgomery County and have had relations with the Mennonite Church. We Schweigfelders are kind of different, but we respect you. Third, for me, the most important thing about Merv is how much he cared about all of us from all our different spaces and how much he sent to us. And I just want to say, I'm so grateful for him. And that's enough.
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else like to share? Carla, go ahead.
I appreciate that Merv felt like sharing a lot of personal things with me. And I think we shared a love of music. And I have good memories from the last almost 40 years also of when Reverend Rimple asked me to play the piano in church, and maybe also others. But Merv, I enjoyed his song leading so much. When I'm playing the piano, I had to watch him and am I leading or is he leading? I'm trying to follow his hand, and you know, we always did all the verses, and it was so much fun. I really miss his enthusiasm for song leading. And at the Christmas Eve for many years, I played the violin with Merv, and he conducted Christmas caroling in the Stuyvesant Park, and that meant a lot to me. And I didn't go to my own family's Christmas Eve in Colorado at that time because I didn't want to miss being with Merv for the Christmas Eve caroling. So I'll always remember that very well. But I also feel that like with his LGBT whatever. Anyway, I just remember he shared many personal things with me in private conversations, which I can't reveal, but I do know that he is a man who wanted reconciliation of people and persons and people that, you know, in the community. And I feel that word reconciliation comes to my mind and means a lot to me. And my last conversation, he was feeling some very deep hurts he was sharing. And I don't know specific what they were, but he was sharing them with me. And then I feel really comfortable. I felt always at home about Merv. And then I'm so happy to see that so many, over 100 other people felt comfortable with Merv too. So Merv was quite the man. And as Mike has said, we want him with us. But I still feel his presence. I feel his spirit, the love that Mel was talking about in the Bible verse. The love transcends death or hell or heaven, up or down. And that's a beautiful passage that Mel read from at the beginning. That's what I was coming out spontaneously. And Mel introduced me, and I went to some of the meditations earlier that he introduced me to from Judson, but he also introduced me to the going to the shape singing. I think he was thinking, what would other people enjoy? What would they like? And I bet he did it with many people, as I can see. That's my end to say.
Thank you,
I'm here in
Carla.
Thailand.
Thank you. And I'm going to hand it back over to Jason in a moment, but I think that Larry, were you interested in sharing as well before we do that?
Please.
Sure.
We worshiped with Merv's family many years. And as a matter of fact, I taught for 33 years at Lancaster Mennonite High, and he was one of my physics students. So I know that aspect of him too. It's really neat to be part of this. I almost missed it. I'm not very tech savvy. And fortunately, my wife came and told me how to spell Jesus with the capital J, and we made it. We're very thankful. We certainly enjoyed the many folks who were part of Merv's family up there in New York. And we'd see him occasionally. We were at his brother Daryl's funeral, at his father's funeral, and good friends with his mom and sister Cindy, and that's how we got connected here today. So thank you very much for making it possible.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you. Merv would have helped you with the spelling of Jesus as well, I'm sure. I'm going to hand it over to Jason. Thank you all so much for these remembrances. Let's keep these stories going.
Yes, thank you, Micah. Thank you, everyone, for these beautiful memories and stories of our dear friend Merv. We have one more song. It's a short one, but just a lovely song that provides a blessing of peace for all of us as we begin to transition. And then there will be a short benediction. Thank you for being with us. Let me share. That was some mighty good harmonica playing. So we close with our benediction. All are welcome to follow along with Micah and I as we read responsively. We go into the darkness
because the light only